and the rise of the robots in that sense. But everything is becoming automated, and to such a degree that, it's sort of a cliche. I think even in the 70s or 80s, we had some idea, and you can see in the movies, of what will happen to us if everything becomes computer-driven. Well, now we're in the middle of it, and it's becoming a kind of a scientific nightmare, really.
It kind of is, because how do you deal with it? And you can see how the secret, say this breakaway secret military thing, well, what do they do about this big group that can't absorb it? And they take it and they're fearful. They're very fearful of what's going on, and they're going to read into it. It gets down to that Plato, the shadows on the wall thing. They're not reading it right, and they're going to take things out of context. And I'm just looking at the devil's advocate and looking at the other side going, how do they really deal with this, knowing that this is the paradigm of what we're really dealing with science?
See, I think that they're right to be afraid of it. I'll tell you why. Not because of what it is, but because of how it's being used. We're talking about if this is what's happening, if there's going to be robot bartenders and driverless cars.
We're already there to a certain degree.
Yeah, I prefer a human version.
I do too.
Yeah, and I won't use an automated thing at the supermarket or anything like that. I go for a real person. But I will say this. So you're going to throw a lot of people out of work. What are you going to do? You're going to enhance a lot of things. There's, they all have different sides of the coin. Of course, robotics will have incredible benefits. I'm sure we're seeing some of them now. But really, what are you going to do with all those people? And I have a series of episodes that I've done with Catherine Austin Fitz, and it's about America in 2020. And they're available at darkjournalist.com. You can go there and watch them. But that series talks about, when we get to 2020 and we've got, the AI kicking in and we have people being thrown out of work because of the automation, it's not like we don't have good financial opportunities coming up because of the because of the automation and because of the robotics. But really, when you get right down to it, we're looking at gigantic changes there. Now, if we go into it and we're in this kind of world where we don't have transparency through the press, if we go into it and we don't have the answers about the secret finance, systems that exist, if we don't have the answers about the black budget, if we don't have answers about global drug running fueling the stock market, then we're going to go, I think, into a hazardous place in America. It might even become a kind of unrecognizable thing in 5 years.
Well,
so it's
we
very
have
important
to have transparency, right?
Yeah.
And we have to have that transparency.
In order to make the right decisions, even as we're looking in this election year, we talked about it. I mean, can you imagine if you or I were on that debate panel asking those people questions, the kind of questions that they would get instead of these softball questions? Like, what were you
Exactly.
Come on.
Well, exactly.
What are you going to do to, how will you ensure that every American has a job? I mean, they're so rhetorical that they don't get into any of the aspects. So, they don't talk, we discussed GMOs, and they don't talk about the pressure of Monsanto, and is this election Monsanto, Goldman Sachs left versus Monsanto, Goldman Sachs right? How are you going to get the influence of that kind of money out of politics? This is the real questions, I think, and the softball things about, what did you think of Marco Rubio saying that you acted like a jerk in that last debate? And
Exactly. Why are you two fighting in the sandbox? Yeah, it's very high schoolish. It's not even it's just very even lower than high school.
I think so. It's showing an aspect of America that is not, I think, what we want to show to the world either. I mean, America is a great country, comes from a great tradition, ultimately. And I think the only way we can get back to that, we have to show it in our presidential election. And I think what we're getting is we're having personalities face off and groups face off. We're not having real issues, deep issues face off.
We do look like a clown act. And
now.
Yeah, I really think it is. But the other thing is some of the things that in the Republican debate, which I think would scare other countries, is the talk about being militarily tough. Yeah. And the way that they're posturing themselves is kind of scary. I'm not sure if it makes sense for us to posture ourselves like we'll take down anybody that even messes with us.
Yeah.
I think the message is pretty clear that we already are doing that. You really need to come out and talk like that, and the banter is like that, and I think it's scary for people to hear that.
Well, you're getting into an interesting area there, and this is all I'll say about that, I think, because I know time is limited, but I'll say this. Really, that kind of cowboy diplomacy brought on the disaster in Iraq. It brought on the disaster in Syria, in Libya, and those are situations now where they're saying, oh, they might have to send in boots on the ground to clean it up. That brought on the ISIS trip. So these were bad policies, and the idea of them being repeated without learning those lessons is just a disaster. But I will say this, when looking at the world, all those refugee crises and all the things that we're seeing about Europe and so on, and the terrible incidents there, and how it's very difficult for these groups of Muslims coming out of Syria to integrate into Switzerland or areas that the culture is totally different. Really, the majority of that problem comes from the incredible intervention of the West in the Middle East. And if anything, that should be the biggest warning to stop it, because it's leading to bigger problems. That's a World War III issue, and we don't want to go there. So, no more.
But aren't we already there?
Policy. What's that?
Aren't we already there with World War III? I mean, when you look at Syria and some of the stuff that's going on.
Well, I think that the threat
is there.
Yeah, because Russia, of course, having their forces in Syria and, supporting Assad, and for some reason, which is never really totally explained, we just want to do anything to get rid of Assad. It doesn't matter if you unleash ISIS or if the money we give to rebels goes to ISIS or whatever. For some reason, we have this kind of fanatical urge to get Assad out at any price.
We do. It's not funny, but yes.
Yeah. So they'll say, well, he's a dictator. I mean, how many dictators do you have in the world that we could take out?
If you're going to go take somebody out and get this crazy about it, go take out North Korea. I'm all in favor of that one.
Oh, hey, what I understand about North Korea is their satellite took a picture of the Super Bowl. So, yeah. They're the last people I think we want with technology. But all we do, is say, well, Iran, Iran, if they get a weapon, forget it. Well, these other guys are already making bombs and have satellites. I think they're a bigger problem somehow.
Well, we should, instead of covering it like play-by-play of what's going on at a superficial level, we need to be the media needs to be talking about the whys. Why are you doing this? Why is this? There needs to be deeper journalism so that people, like you always say, you go deep. There needs to be deeper journalism so that people can really understand what's going on. And I know there's a lot of alternative sites. And now with the internet, you can go to other countries. You can go to news organizations in other countries and learn. And that really is helpful for being able to understand what's going on, because other countries have different perspectives. In my class that I taught this fall, I had the students, I had some, about a third of the class were foreigners. And it was interesting. I asked them, what does the rest of the world think of the United States? And they were silent. They wouldn't talk. They just would not talk. And it's
not a good sign somehow.
Yeah, they wouldn't, but they all kind of nodded that it was very different. They agreed with it, and it was very clear, but they wouldn't give examples and they didn't want to talk about it, right? And I thought that was really interesting how they all agreed that it was different. But it is. It's very different, and I think it's very educational and important for us to see different perspectives so that we can get a grip on what we're doing and why we're doing it. But
yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it. Of course, RT was an incredible, showed up on the scene and explored a lot of issues. They're Russian state media, but they were willing to, and they exposed something about the Western corporate media, which is that it is under incredible control. So they were willing to talk about things like GMOs and et cetera, because they knew it was embarrassing to Western interests in a sense. But in the grand scheme of things, I think we need something from our perspective that really gets to the truth about the things that are going on. Yeah, in America and globally. Really,
I see what you're saying, because if all we rely on is other countries' perspectives, that's dangerous. And so now what's going on? I love this point, because now what's going on is our country's forcing intelligent people to go to other countries and to learn about what's really going on from other perspectives, from other countries and other agendas, right? We want to, and it's not that we want somebody forcing an agenda down our throat, but we really need to see the real side from with it's self-preservation as well.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a
yeah.
If you look at it that way, it's national security almost. We're getting all of our people looking outside our media to get information.
You've identified the problem.
I just figured something out.
That's why I got into dark journalism, because, what you have is, I call it schizophrenic state, where the public actually knows more than the media is telling them. That's a very tricky situation. And, of course, the level of secrecy maintained at government levels and corporate levels about a number of topics that we've talked about, whether it's geoengineering, whether it's advanced technology, whether it's these breakaway groups who have access to, because, when you talk about advanced technology, they have access to advanced medicine, advanced science. So they understand things from a bigger perspective. And that's not, I think, how we intended to set up America, which is, some small group that hoards all the information and all the technology decisions.
Yeah, it gets back to us thriving and innovating and growing and maturing as a species.
Yeah,
it does. It gets back to
it's centralization. We can spin it down to, we're on the decentralization team, you and I. That's what we're doing.
We're decentralizing.
Yeah, we're centralizing. The centralizers are busy with the corporate media and the top 1% of Wall Street, right? And the government structure. That's a centralized process. And it reminds me kind of like the old Soviet Union process, if you look at it and you really study it. Because they wanted centralized control. They wanted their centralized economy. Well, that seems to be what we're getting. So we get a little dose of that, and we get a little dose of that kind of militarization of police, the TSA being, kind of going outside of constitutional bounds. And, so we have a number of things that represent a more authoritarian society suddenly since 9/11. But this has been in the works for a long time. So that combination of a centralized media and the corporate media, the consolidation that's taken place there, into 6 different corporate hands from hundreds. There used to be hundreds of news outlets. So if you combine that with the police militarization, with the Patriot Act, and with these things, it's a very different country. And I don't think that that's the model that we want. So I think the first thing is you get the information, you get the transparency going, and it is important to get the perspective of other cultures. I agree with you 100%. But ultimately, it's going to be that homegrown version of understanding
you have to have it here.
Reality that we're in. You're going to have it.
Once again, just for people, the innovation and for the society to thrive. So yeah,
so I think it's crucial.
So what are you doing coming forward? What do you have going on that you can share with us? What do you have going on to help us thrive and innovate and become better? I know you have so many projects. So Tell us about your future projects and what you have going on.
Well, one of the incredible things we have coming up is we're in the middle of a series on CERN, which is the Hadron Collider that's in Geneva, Switzerland, and which is being funded billions of dollars. And yet the groups that are using it and the funding behind it is very secret. And so we've been exploring it with Dr. Joseph Farrell, and we're finding some very interesting answers about that project and how it actually has aspects to it that don't have anything to do with the cover story. The cover story of the CERN Collider is that it ostensibly is out there as a particle physics. They're doing these collider experiments and using the information to find, the God particle and things of this nature. So it's strictly a particle physics exercise. But what we find is it has a lot of deep state connections, and they may in fact be creating a kind of torsion weapon with it, which represents a lot of political repercussions. So we're going deep into that. We've been doing...
And this is available on your website for your subscribers.
Yeah, you can actually, that's available for free. We have a subscription for people who want to go a little bit deeper. And so they can get it. Even that is pretty inexpensive. It's $39 for a year.
Okay.
And so our free subscribers and our paid subscribers are both growing right now at a good speed, and we're looking at it. But people can go there at any time to darkjournalist.com and get the episodes, the most recent episodes that are there. And certainly if you're there and you like the material, you can subscribe for even deeper stuff. And some exclusive material and audio files and things like that. And I would say that